Evran Üniversitesi ve İktisadi Kalkınma ve Sosyal Araştırmalar Enstitüsü işbirliğiyle geleneksel hale gelen Evran Uluslararası Bilimsel Araştırmalar Kongresi'nin 6.sını 4-7 Haziran 2026 tarihleri arasında Kosova'nın başkenti Prishtina'da gerçekleştirecek olmanın heyecanını yaşamaktayız. Bilimsel bilgi ve üretimin ve uluslararası akademik işbirliğinin her geçen gün daha da önem kazandığı günümüzde farklı disiplinlerden araştırmacıları ortak bir platformda buluşturmaya amaçlayan kongremiz, sosyal bilimler, eğitim bilimleri, fen bilimleri, sağlık bilimleri ve teknoloji alanlarında yürütülen güncel araştırmaların paylaşılmasına, yeni fikirlerin tartışılmasına ve uluslararası akademik ağların güçlendirilmesine katkı sunmaktadır. Bu yıl kongremizde toplam 302 bilimsel bildiri yüz yüze ve çevrim içi oturumlarda sunulacaktır. Türkiye'nin yanı sıra 35 ülkeden bilim insanlarının katılımıyla kongremiz gerçek anlamda bir uluslararası şölen haline dönüşecektir. 2021 yılında Kırşehir'de başlayan ve sırasıyla Kırşehir, Bakü ve Dubai'de başarıyla gerçekleştirilen Evran Uluslararası Bilimsel Araştırmalar Kongresi bugün dünyanın farklı coğrafyalarından araştırmacıları bir araya getiren güçlü bir akademik marka haline gelmiştir. Bilimin evrensel dili etrafında buluşacağımız bu anlamlı organizasyonda sizleri aramızda görmekten büyük bir onur duyacağız. Bilimsel birikimlerin paylaşılacağı, yeni işbirliklerin kurulacağı ve dostlukların pekişeceği kongremizin tüm katılımcılar için verimli ve ufuk açıcı sonuçlar doğurmasını temenni ediyor. Sizleri 6. Evran Uluslararası Bilimsel Araştırmalar Kongresi'ne davet ediyoruz. Bilimin ışığında ahiliğin rehberliğinde buluşmak dileğiyle.
Sayın Hoca.
Hello, dear colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. So, good afternoon or good morning, depending on those who are in other time zones. My name is Sándor Földvári. So simple, the name is Sándor or Alex, and I'm the moderator of this session. We have still 3 times. So we will begin after 3 minutes for time. So we will begin after 3 minutes. Therefore, I am now checking the program in this main time. So this is our session. And as you can see, the first paper presenter is Dr. Andrei Lamaslaite is here, yes?
Yes, that's
Yes.
it.
Then the second paper presenter are 2 colleagues, Michales Yuri and Zavula Nicolae from Moldova. I can see them. And then from India, I can see them. And then Dr. Naima Labiad is here. So practically, and my name is in the last place in the printed program. So the first paper presenter must be Dr. Andrei Lamaslaite, then Dr. Naima Labiad, then me. If someone still appears, then we will follow this printed program. Okay, so now this is the exact time to begin. So I kindly invite Dr. Andrei Lamaslaite, and then I kindly invite Dr. Naima Labiad for the second. And I will be the third, unless other participants still appear. Dr. Andrei, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor. I will...
If nobody else, that I'm in the line. I'm sharing the screen, and my kind question that can you see my shared screen and can you hear me? So everybody is okay in technical aspect.
Yes, we see it and we hear you.
Okay.
Yes,
So
perfectly.
yes. So dear colleagues, I am a historian from Central Europe. My homeland, Hungary, is located in Central Europe, and my field of research is the history of the Eastern Europe, mostly Slavic countries and Baltic countries as well, mainly in the early modern time. That means that 16th and 17th centuries, but not exclusively. So in this presentation, I will deal with the modern, contemporary model thus formulated by Huntington about the conflict of the civilizations and how it can be applied in the early modern history, thus my field of research, especially on the case of the war between the Polish-Lithuanian twin state, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and the Muscovian Tsardom. That was the so-called the Livonian War. Thus, Huntington's model appeared in the late 12th century, in the last century. Huntington published a monograph too, which was republished and discussed many times. However, he published first an article, a paper on the topic, and I'm referring to this paper here, which was published in the Journal of Council of Foreign Relations, and this is the G-Store das link in the 1993. And then about these problems and discussion, the clash of civilization as a paradigm, the paradigm as a model to explain the processes in the history. A monograph is highlighted from the references exploring the clash of, not a monograph, but a paper, International Journal of Business and Social Science. So, briefly, Huntington's opinion means that the civilizations are different and the conflict of civilizations is inevitable. If it is true or not, it is not the subject of my presentation. The subject of my presentation that how it appears, how such a question appears in the historical times. So let's see the Livonian War. Livonia means the lands around the Baltic Sea. Thus, Livland was a territory which covered the contemporary northern Latvia. Thus, here is Riga, and there's a Gulf of Riga, the Baltic Sea, and the contemporary southern Estonia. Therefore, the Livonian War was so targeted not only against this territory, Livland, but even against the territory of Estland, that's contemporary northern Estonia, and the contemporary Lithuania, thus against the Polish Kingdom, Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and these Baltic territories, which were inhabited by local Baltic tribes and inhabitants and Baltic Germans. And Baltic Germans developed these cities inhabited by tradesmen, thus Viljandi, Tartu, and Valga, contemporary Estonian cities, even Tallinn as a capital of Estonia, were members of the Hanseatic Legu. The Hanseatic Legu was headed by the city of Lübeck in Germany. And the Hanseatic Legu was the association of those cities which dealt with the trade. So it was the trade Legu. And the Muscovian Tsardom begin the Livonian War against these Hanseatic cities, against these territories of Hanseatic cities in 1568. And then the Muscovian Tsardom destroyed Novgorod, another center of the Russian lands. Why? And how it can be explained by the model of the clash of civilizations. Thus, the main enemies in the war were the Polish king Stephen Báthory, actually of Hungarian origin. He came to Poland from Hungary. He was elected as a Polish king, but before he was a Grand Prince of Transylvania. This is a contemporary map of the Polish kingdom and Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and Ivan the Terrible. He was the first Russian Tsar. Before him, the Russian rulers were called the Grand Princes of Muscovy, and Ivan the Terrible was a very authoritarian dictator of the Muscovian Principality. And the Hanseatic Legu, these tradesmen in the cities around the Baltic Sea, had good contacts with Novgorod. Novgorod was a city republic, a town republic in this contemporary map. Yes, this is Novgorod. And this map is not very correct, but this is from the 17th century, a century after this, after the time of the question. And Novgorod was a democratic republic of the tradesmen. So there were a city republic of tradesmen and tons of tradesmen, members of the Hanseatic Legu. And they had good connection to Novgorod, good trade connection. And when Ivan the Terrible appeared and the power of Muscovy increased, then the Hanseatic cities refused to follow the trade contacts with Muscovy, because Novgorod was a democratic city republic of tradesmen. Therefore, the safety of trade was guaranteed. But how to keep contacts, how to keep trade business contacts with such a dictator as Ivan the Terrible? This is a risk. And the Hanseatic cities refused any business contacts with the Russian Tsar Ivan the Terrible. And then Ivan the Terrible answered, okay, then I will attack you, and he attacked the Baltic territories. This was the beginning of the Lithuanian War, and after, some years later, he attacked his main counterpart, the Democratic Republic of Novgorod. Thus, in this war, the brutality of Muscovian troops was depicted in Western European journals. Thus, on one hand, it is important that already in the second half of the 17th century, already printed journals appeared in Western Europe, thanks to the book printing, which was developed by Gutenberg a century ago. And in Germany, in Nuremberg, nowadays in Nuremberg, and in a Latin language and in English name too, in Nuremberg, in 1561, gravure was published that how cruel were the Russian troops, because the culture of war already was developed in Western Europe. And in Western Europe, wars were cruel, of course, but soldiers confiscated the food from the local inhabitants, and soldiers killed the troops of the enemy. But in Western Europe, it was not not accepted in such a great measure to force the local inhabitants and to torture the local inhabitants. So you can see in this picture that the Russian troops tortured innocent women from the local inhabitants. And in Western Europe, it was depicted that it was another type of culture of war. Therefore, this Livonian War can be interpreted as a clash of civilization, two civilizations, because Moscow was under the Tatar rule and paid the tax to the Golden Horde, and the Muscovian culture was greatly influenced by the Tatars, while the Western European culture was influenced by the beginning of the bourgeois development, of the citizens' culture, the trade culture, the business, the spirit of the business. Therefore, the Livonian War can be explained as an example of the clash of civilization, as Huntington described it in the end of the 20th century. Thus, the Tsarist Muscovy, Ivan the Terrible, conquered and destroyed the Democratic Republic of Novgorod after he attacked the Livonian territories. This was the huge territory of the Republic of Novgorod, and this is the Gulf of Finland, and this is the Lake Ladoga, and nowadays here is St. Petersburg, which still didn't exist in that time, and this is the border of the Baltic territories and territories of Novgorod, even nowadays the border between Estonia and Russia. Therefore, Novgorod was a huge state governed by a democratically elected assembly of tradesmen. And Ivan the Terrible, the Tsar of Muscovy, ruined Novgorod. Why? Because Novgorod was a business partner of the Baltic territories, but the Baltic territories refused any business contact with the dictatorship of Muscovy, because Muscovy was developed under the Tatar Asiatic culture. Therefore, it was another type of civilization, while Republic of Novgorod was a type of civilization in the sense of the European civilization. And it was an important, an important turn in this war, that the Polish king Stephen Batory requested help from the Turkish Sultan, and his envoy was the diplomat Marton Berzevici, who was of Hungarian and German origin, and then he became a Polish nobleman too, and he was a state secretary to the king of Batory, and he went to the Turkish Sultan to request financial help and permission for the using of Transylvanian troops, because Stephen Batory was the Grand Prince of Transylvania, but Transylvania was a vassal state of the Turkish Sultan. And the Turkish Sultan, and this is the point, the Turkish Sultan gave more. He gave not only permission to use Transylvanian troops in the Livonian War in the north, but he also gave troops from Moldavia and Wallachia, two Romanian principalities, which were also vassal states of the Turkish Sultan, and financial help too, because the Turkish Sultan, also being Muslim, representative of the Islam civilization, helped the Catholic ruler, the European ruler of the Polish kingdom, against the Russian Tsar, because the Turkish Sultan was of the opinion that the Russian attack against the European civilization was the danger of the whole world in that time, in the 16th century. Therefore, the main conclusions, what can it teach to us? The Polish-Russian War in the second term of the Polish-Russian War in 1579 and 81, because it began, the Livonian War began in 1568, as I have already shown in the previous slide, was a significant step in regaining the lands that Russia had earlier conquered. Thus, in this second term, the Polish king, Stephen Batory, regained the lands that Russia had earlier conquered. Thus, he defeated the Tsar Ivan the Terrible. And Moscow was under the Tatar rule, as I have already said, and paid to the Golden Horde the tax. And much influence was made on Muscovian culture by Tatars. And this Muscovian state soon came into sharp conflict with Europe in the Baltic territory, while its predecessors didn't. Novgorod, for instance, didn't. And the northern German and Baltic towns allied and formed the Hanseatic League, which had several members down in Livonia too, because the center of Hanseatic League was the German city Lübeck. And there existed an especially democratic state, Novgorod, which was a republic of the city, thus a town state ruled by the council of the rich merchants, by the authoritarian rich merchants, but not by any authoritarian power, not authoritarian power. However, when the authoritarian state Muscovy arose, then the Hanseatic League, especially the Livonian towns, stopped all trade and administrative relation with Muscovy, because the healthy logic of the tradesmen felt the danger of business contacts with the authoritarian Muscovy. Okay, this was the clash of civilization, the conflict of two types of civilization, as Huntington described it in modern times. And the Muscovian answer was cruel. If you do not have good business contacts with us, then I conquer and destroy you. This was the meaning of the brutal civilization, the Muscovian civilization. And Livonia was forced to have new Russian inhabitants settled in former flourishing Hanseatic towns, and this was the beginning of the Russian immigration in the Baltic territories. The main references. I have already referred to the work by Angerman and Friedland about Novgorod, and I highlight by red color the Birnbaum's monograph about Novgorod, and Halperin's work about Novgorod, the Novgorodian lands, and a German monograph from the pen of German author Mühle, Die städtischen Handelszentren, that's the city trade system and trade connection with the Nordic Russia, and Ukrainian monograph. It's hardly can be read by the wide circle of colleagues, but it's very important, from the Ukrainian historian Podolyak. Mogutnya Hansa, that's the great Hansa, that's the Hanseatic League, commercial terrain and urban life, Miske Życia in Ukrainian, and diplomatia, that's the commercial terrain, urban life, and diplomacy in the 12th up from the 12th up to the 17th century. This was published in Ukrainian Kiev, but very important to the topic, and a very old but important monograph, Die Deutsche Hansa in Russland, the German Hansa in Russia. Therefore, this is not the full list of references, but the list of main references. So I thank you much for your attention, and for Turkish organizers, çok teşekkür ederim. Thanks so much for the opportunity to present here, and I try to send the full paper in due time, because we have a week, but it is recommended to complete the full papers. As for me, I will complete the full paper. So I have finished my presentation. So if someone has technical question to this session, the floor is open. If not, yes?
Yeah, maybe I have a question. Thank you for your presentation, Professor Sander. We are, I think, we are not in the same discipline. I'm in the finance and you are in the history, but I would like to ask a question about your presentation. I would like to, if you can, I want to have your opinion about the war between Polish and Russian. Do you consider if this conflict mainly was related to religious differences like Catholicism and Orthodoxy, and not about lands and power? This is my question.
Oh, it was related to the religious conflicts, but not mainly. Because Ivan the Terrible represented, the Tsar of Muscovy represented the Byzantine Orthodoxy. That's the Byzantine type of Eastern Christianity. And the Polish king represented the Catholic Church.
Yeah, exactly.
But why it was not a conflict between Catholics and Orthodoxies? First, that's two main aspects. First, the Baltic territories, the Livonian territory, which was the main target of the Muscovian Tsar, represented the German Protestantism. The statesmen in Baltic cities were German, and they represented the Lutheran Protestantism, the evangelic Protestantism, following Martin Luther. So Martin Luther managed his Reformation movement and translated the Bible in Germany in the first half of the 16th century, and in the second half of the 16th century, these Baltic German tradesmen and the whole elite of the Baltic lands were German Protestants. Therefore, Ivan the Terrible did not attack the German Protestant. He wanted to establish business contacts with the German Protestant, but the German Protestants refused the contact with Muscovy, not because Muscovy was the Orthodox Christian state, because these German Protestants had good business contacts with Novgorod, as I have said in the presentation. And Novgorod, the city republic, also represented the Byzantine type, that's the Orthodox Russian Christianity. Thus, this is the first argument, thus it couldn't be interpreted as a religious conflict, because Novgorod had good business contacts, but Novgorod was Orthodox Christian state. Muscovy attacked Livonia, not because Muscovy was Orthodox. Novgorod didn't attack Livonia. Novgorod had good trade contacts. This is the way. And second is brief, but such an important, that the Turkish Sultan helped the Roman Catholic Polish king. Okay, as I showed in a slide, that the Turkish Sultan not only permitted that the Transylvanian troops from Transylvania, the vassal state of the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Ottoman Empire, could be used in the Livonian War, and they regained the greatest city, Polotsk, nowadays in Belarus. The Turkish Sultan even gave more troops from other Turkish vassal states, the Romanian principalities, and even more money. Thus, the Muslim Turkish Sultan, who was the Caliph of the Islamic world, okay, the Caliph, that is the successor of the Prophet Muhammad, that the religious head of the Islamic world, gave troops and money to the Roman Catholic Christian Polish king against the Orthodox Christian Muscovian Tsar. So it cannot be interpreted as a religious conflict because, as I said, because not only the Roman Catholic and Orthodox were in contradiction, but Orthodox Muscovy against Orthodox Novgorod, and on the other hand, the Muslim Turkish Sultan was an ally to the Roman Catholic Polish king. So it was not a
religious conflict.
Not religion played important role, because the Roman Pope sent an ambassador, Possevino, an Italian diplomat, Possevino, to end this war, because the Roman Pope was afraid to allow the Polish king Báthory could defeat Muscovy, and if Polish troops defeated Muscovy, then it was an opportunity to establish a very huge Eastern European state under the rule of the Polish king. And the Roman Pope was jealous for that. And that's why diplomat Possevino went to Muscovy, and the Russian Tsar Ivan the Terrible said to the Italian diplomat, the Jesuit monk Possevino, that he was ready to convert the Roman Catholic religion, confession. But it was a lie. Ivan the Terrible, the dictator, the Russian Tsar, was a great liar. Then the Roman Pope said to the Polish king Báthory, okay, you can finish this war, because that Russian Tsar is ready to be converted to the Roman Catholic confession. It was not true, but it was thus an argument to stop this war. And even in this way, the Polish kingdom thus defeated the Muscovian Tsardom, but didn't conquer it. So if the Roman Pope didn't involve, if the Roman Pope hadn't involved, that the Polish king could conquer even Muscovy. So that was the religious aspect, not religious, but political aspect. So religion was only the surface of political events. That's what can I say? So, dear colleagues, is here anybody who hasn't yet presented? Not. But is here the observer from the Turkish organizers? As dear Turkish organizer, thanks so much for your opportunity to give us possibility to present here. Çok teşekkür ederim. Teşekkürler Sayın Hocam. So, dear colleagues, thanks so much. And those who want to publish full paper can send it within a week.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Have a good time.
Okay,
It
thank
was
you
a
very much.
pleasure.
Thank you for you. Thank you